my life, I mean, how that has affected me. So I will first of all do a presentation, and you'll see from this presentation some of the artwork that I will show you. The first part of this will be mostly on some basic notions about Chinese art and the appreciation of Chinese art. And then I will show you some of my art that has more to do with Christian spirituality. So the title also has a meaning. I will explain it to you later. Okay. So when you look at Chinese art, it's very important to know that it came from calligraphy. Calligraphy basically is a very traditional Chinese form of art. So you have a brush, right? And I'm sure a lot of you who have Chinese background knows that you need to learn when you're young how to hold your brush, and it's very hard to master it, right? And then we talk about the brush, the ink, the paper, and also the ink dish, which actually a lot of people don't use now. Nowadays we use, for sake of laziness, ink, right? So it's already already in the bottle form. But I mean, there's some purists who will still use ink stick and also the to do it on the dish and to make the ink. But it's very important to know that both all these form of arts, calligraphy and the seal carving and the painting, have a very common denominator, which is calligraphy. So you can see, for example, in this painting of the Ming Dynasty, of a bamboo and an orchid, very traditional painting. That the painting, okay, is done in a style that usually uses a very similar strokes, art strokes, as the brush. And with the same brush, you would do the calligraphy. So the way to appreciate the basic of Chinese painting is to realize that when Chinese people say that they're going to paint, actually they're going to say that I'm going to paint, I'm going to write a painting. Okay, that's the word they use. I'm going to write painting, because it's the same instrument that is being used to paint as well as to write. And actually there's another part of this painting you can see is writing. Okay, it's quite something that is particular of the Chinese art. So especially when you see, compare it to the Western arts or the form of arts, you don't usually see a lot of writing. Okay, but here in the Chinese tradition, since it's the same instrument, it becomes very, I guess, easy for people to say, I'm going to explain or to write a poem to express myself, right? So the three art forms come together, right? So in addition to calligraphy and the painting, there's also poetry. There's also poetry. And so sometimes you can tell the meaning of this painting through what the artist want to say about it, okay, in the painting. So here there are two other famous paintings that you can see the importance of the strokes of the art, right? So you can see that these strokes are done in such a way that they're very strong and very simple, And with a few strokes, you're supposed to be able to represent the subject. So it takes a lot of mastery so that you'll be able to, with a few strokes, express the subject. When we talk about Chinese painting, they say that the ink wash is actually the most pure because later on we can also add colors to it. But then the ink strokes, black and white, actually is the most basic of Chinese painting. And actually most Chinese paintings start with the ink, and then later on you can add the colors. So here you can see, oh, this is a painting of a monk, okay? So very few strokes, he was able to express that. So it's composition, but it's also the stroke. The strokes are important because it comes from the same technique of writing calligraphy, right? So we can say that there's strength in it, and it's very difficult to explain what is this strength. What does it mean to have a strength? It is something that I guess you would know when you start to do it. It's hard. It's not easy, right? To show the strengths and the strokes of the thing. The other thing that is interesting about Chinese painting is that even though they look real, the main thing for the Chinese art is that they want to represent the spirit or the essence of all your painting. So here, this is kind of like the inner life, right, of this monk walking, and here you have this horse, but this horse is running. So it's not just enough to do the shape, but you actually represent something much more deeper, inner, and then basically here, this is the hard part, right? In a few strokes, you're able to express the essence and also the movement and the life of this subject that you're trying to portray. Here, this is another example, this time with more color, right? So you can see that these strokes are very strong in the sense that they're done with like a few strokes. So you basically, this leaf is like one leaf here is one stroke or two strokes. And here you can see that it's a stroke. So each stroke is kind of like writing a calligraphy, right? And then you add it all together and it becomes a painting, right? So here are some examples of mine. They're not as nice as the ones I show you. Some experiments that I have. Bamboo is a traditional one that you can show a lot of strokes because bamboo in the leaves, they're very much like you're writing calligraphy. Here, this is another example of experiment of showing the exuberance of the branches. So it's a different kind of strokes. You try to show the strength and the movement of the branches and also the new buds on this in this branch. Here is another, I guess, composition that I kind of was experimenting, trying to show the force of the tree trunk, right? And so the painting of the trunk is actually quite audacious because I'm occupying almost 50%, half of the painting with the trunk, right? So once again, the appreciation of the art is the strokes is the main thing, right? But then after that, you also try to experiment with the composition. And in the composition wise, you can see that there is a lot of empty space. It's very important in Chinese painting that you have places of density and places of nothing, right? So here, this is the interplay between black and white, between fullness and emptiness. So here, this is a calligraphy. You can see that also in calligraphy, there's also one thing that you see is a lot of seals. right? Stamps. And these stamps are also very important because they represent the authenticity of a certain piece of work. People usually, the first thing that you carve usually is your name and your last name. And then later on, you can put something like, this is my collection, or this is I'm from this town, or it's from this place that I have named the room or the place that I do this painting, and so on. So basically, through these seals, you can actually trace the development of who possessed this painting or this calligraphy through time. So what happens is that, like, if you are a collector, right? If you collected a famous calligraphy, you want to leave something of yourself onto that piece of work, so you put your stamp there, right? Saying that I own it at one time, right? So you put your seal there, and then people in the future will say, okay, this guy, Joseph Tham, had possession of this at one time, right? So they can recognize that. So here, different examples of that. Here, basically, you have one calligraphy, and then what happens is that through time, people not only put down their own seals, right? Sometimes they put in other calligraphy beside it, right? So it's almost like either a commentary or a way of saying that I want to associate myself to this piece of artwork. Calligraphy in Chinese is considered the highest form of art. The highest form of art. It's most valued form of art. So when you associate yourself to it, you can basically write different things. Here, actually, a lot of this is from one person, which is um, the emperor in the Qing Dynasty, Qianlong. He loves collecting calligraphy, and he likes to write on it as well. So a lot of these things are written by him. This is him, 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 this is him. And he just basically put all the stamps there to just kind of, because he enjoys it so much that every time he looks at it, he needs to say something about it, right? He just writes a commentary, an impression, how you felt that day, what they had for dinner, and how this writing impacted on him. So when you see a lot of actually older painting and artwork, you will always see his writings on it. Okay, so actually some people didn't like it because it's like he ruined a lot of these pieces of work because he is so excessive in this that it doesn't look very nice, right? So we can now go to the historical part, which is from the different dynasties. So here, this is the Song Dynasty. Song Dynasty is an important period in Chinese painting because the emperor, one of the emperors in this dynasty, Song Jingzhong, right? So one of the emperors was a lover of art, and he promoted art a lot. Actually, he's not a very good emperor. He's actually considered a very good artist, good calligrapher, but actually a terrible ruler. At one time, he had to run away because the he had to run away and run away in exile because he was being attacked. He was not very good at defending the country. So anyway, while he was um, being an artist, okay, he promoted art and he does a lot of painting. This is a painting by him. And so he established the academy. And you know, in the old days, okay, if you are the emperor and you like something, people would follow you, right? So there will be a lot of promotion. People will try to flatter the emperor. And so he basically became very Chinese art flourished under him. Okay, so we moved from the Song Dynasty to the Yuan Dynasty really fast, really fast. The Yuan Dynasty, as you know, is a Mongolian occupation. So there, the art work did not flourish as much because the artists felt that they were under dominion, okay, and they didn't enjoy that. At the same time, there were more foreigners coming in, and you can see an influence of more type of art that are more, how should I say, decorative type of art. Here, once again, you have the same emperor of the Qing Dynasty who basically put his stamps and his calligraphy on top of that painting. Now we go to the Ming Dynasty, so we're back to Chinese rule. And here is an example of a landscape painting. Okay. Once again, you can see the same idea. You know, the painting is not just a painting, but through time, you have different people putting stamps on it, putting calligraphy on it, okay, and putting poetry on it, okay. So this is a very much part of the tradition of Chinese artwork. So here we see another painting. This painting is a hand scroll, okay, hand scroll. What is a hand scroll? Basically, it's a very long painting, but it's rolled up. And so you actually cannot display it on the wall. In fact, most Chinese paintings in those days are rolled up in the scroll, just like the ones I showed you in the back, right? They're rolled up in the scroll. And why is that? The reason being, Chinese concept of art and calligraphy and all this is so high that they say that paintings are not meant to be decorative, right? The artist would write something, but they don't frame them and put them up for decoration because that would make it cheap. They said the art form is so noble, okay, that they only meant to be shared with your friends and people who could appreciate it, right? So what happens is that, okay, they're rolled up. If I'm an artist or calligrapher, I rolled it up, and then it's not for decoration. People don't see it. Only if I have some friends who are at this level who could appreciate my art, would come by, and then I show it to him. And then he might feel inspired, and he might want to write a poem on the side, right? And or put a chart or whatever, right? So this is the way it goes. So that's why paintings are rolled up in a scroll. This scroll, you can look at it again. It's a hand scroll, meaning that it's horizontal, not vertical. In some way, this is actually, you cannot see the whole thing at once. You only see one part of it as the scroll gets unrolled, okay, through time. So what does that mean? It means that this is kind of like a movie, okay, way back when they didn't have movie. You can only see a part of it, okay, and the change. So some of the hand scrolls are very long, and you only see a part of it, and it's telling a story or telling a scenery, right? So this is the old movies, the first movies in the world, okay, in the form of painting. Also, you would see that the composition in Chinese paintings, the landscape, obviously, you can do it on paper, but in the old days, they would also do it on silk, right? Because paper tend to decay with time. So silk is more lasting, it's more expensive. And then also the technique It's different. Sometimes they use black and white. Sometimes they also use more colorful paintings, more colors on the paintings. So in this case, this painting has got a very interesting story. This is actually not an original painting. It's actually a copy. We know this because the artist talked about it. Basically, the story goes that he's actually a famous artist, okay? He did a copy of another painting because a friend of his, okay, had this original painting. But then a more important official came by to his friend's place and demanded that he sell him this painting. And his friend was very reluctant. He didn't want to sell it. But then this guy is very powerful. And he doesn't know if he doesn't give it to this other person that he might get persecuted, he might lose his money, his property, he might lose his life. You never know. You know, in those days in China, things are a little bit corrupt. So it's kind of almost like a blackmail. Give me this painting or you will suffer. So this artist heard about this dilemma of the friend who didn't want to give up his family heirloom, right? Something that they have kept in the family. So this friend said, "Don't worry, I do a very nice copy for you." Okay, in those days, they didn't have any photocopying machine. So since he's a very accomplished artist, he did a copy, right? And this is actually the copy of the painting. The original painting is lost. Okay, you don't find it anymore. Here, this is another. Can you see this? Can you see this screen?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear?
Well, we can see the same picture, but not from the BBC
Okay.
website.
Okay. Sorry, I just put it. I'll stop share and then share the other one. Okay. So basically, a story about the. Can you hear?
Yes. Not from the video.
Not from the video. How come?
We can hear you, but not from the video.
Okay. Sorry. How do I do this? Maybe I have to turn this off. Oh, wait. This is on. Can you hear now?
No.
Maybe I have to turn off my mic.
No.
Can you hear now?
3 times.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I have to go back. All right. Sorry. Now we can.
Sorry, can't hear anything.
You can't?
No, cannot. I don't know about the others, but I can't hear anything. Let me see if I can. No.
Nobody. Are you the only one who can't hear anything?
I don't know about the rest. I can't hear anything, but there are. Can you hear?
No, can't hear.
No, right.
No.
It doesn't matter. We can read the words.
Yeah, there's subtitles. Yeah.
Mhm.
Five dynasties. I thought. Mhm.
Okay, so this is a Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so good. So now we move from the Ming Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty, closer to modern times. So once again, the change in subject. Here, this is a very famous artist, I'm sure, Chai Bak-set, and then Yan Bak-yin. So basically, movement in the painting history, basically there are two types of traditions. One is more like we call paintings by those who are more like scholars or the literatos. And basically they're not professional artists. They're usually well-to-do, they're officials. And then they basically start painting as a hobby. And there are those who are more artisans or people who work as professional artists, right? And so they use things which are more colorful and more decorative. They paint in quartz. And actually, in general, there's a little bit of rivalry between these two groups. But usually, Chinese painting is appreciated mostly for those who are literatos, right? Those who basically are more scholars, right? And they do a lot of calligraphy and a lot of also type of seal carving at the same time. So we go to the modern age. Okay, here this is a very famous painting by Cheng Dai-Chin. So here we're going into a new era, okay, where there is much more influence from Western art, okay, and here the emphasis is less on the traditional strokes and more on composition. So you can see that in this this work of art. Now, one part of this in the modern era is Ling Nan School of Art, which is basically my school. It was started also in the 1920s or 30s. Okay, and here this is also an import of realism into Chinese painting and 3-dimension. So in the old days, Chinese painting don't have a lot of 3-dimension. They tend to be much more flat, much more abstract. Here, Chinese painting moves to another experiment through contact with Western art and also Japanese art to make it more 3-dimensional. The subjects are also more varied, not as traditional subjects, and they put in things that are looked upon as new, right? So this is one of the founders of this school. So you can see the 3-dimension characteristic of it that sometimes you can even say that, well, this doesn't look even like a Chinese painting, right? So this is but then the main thing about Chinese painting is that the strokes are still important, right? You can see the importance of the strokes. Technique is new, right? But then the strokes, what we call the foundation is still there. So this is my teacher's teacher, okay, my grand teacher, right? So Go Feng. So the other guy was the one that you just saw was his brother. They're one of the founders of the school. So this painting of the eagle, okay, is quite famous. My painting of the eagle is an imitation of his, okay. So what we can see is that in Chinese painting, there's no problem with copying. Copying is fine because it's a way of honoring your almost your ancestors, right? So he does a lot of very beautiful paintings that are very, very striking. Here in the Ling Nan School, more important is also not only the strokes, but also the composition. Composition are very, very forceful, very strong. The colors are also brighter, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here, this is a painting by my teacher's teacher, okay. Once again, you can see the composition, very, very beautiful composition. And here he talks about how he got inspired by this painting. He just went out on the street and he got some branches and he basically saw these branches were very beautiful. The shapes are very nice, and then he brought them home and then he started painting and then made it into a composition. So later on, I talk about inspiration, right? How do you get inspired by your paintings? How do you, why do you want to do this painting? And that basically is another story, okay? Here, this is my teacher, okay, my teacher. More colorful, once again, I would try to show you a bit of variety. My teacher as well, landscape, okay. And now we can talk about the different types of paintings, okay. What kind of subjects do Chinese painting like? Chinese paintings have three groups of paintings. First is landscape, and then flowers and birds are considered as second type subject. And third one is people. Okay. The thing about Chinese painting, even in landscape, is that what Chinese painting does is has a very strange perspective, right? This perspective is not like the Western art, where you're watching from below and you only see looking up. This perspective is almost like an aerial view, more like you're flying mid-air and you see the mountain from up and also from down. Okay, so this is a what we call an aerial perspective. So this is a painting that I did 2 years ago as well, of a place in Zhangjiajie. So that's a painting. I can, let me see if I have time. Oh, okay, I'll show you this video. To show you the perspective. Oops, hey, it jumped. Wait, I have to go back. So basically, oops, let's see. This doesn't have a sound, so you just watch it. Okay. It's basically a Chinese painting that is made into 3 dimensions, so that you could look at how you would have looked from the normal perspective. So you would see the birds, see the river, you see the tree, you see the little hut, you see the leaves falling, you see the person inside in the desk, you see a little bit of mist in the fog. So this is a recreation of a Chinese painting. You see the smaller trees further up on the mountain. You see a little bird. You can see the bird in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, it's a bird. It's a person.
Yeah, very roundish.
Actually, it's a person. Now you can see that it's a
Yeah.
person who's carrying some tie, some wood.
Yeah.
Okay. As another person in front, fishing. Oh no, not fishing. He's on the buffalo. Okay. And then you move around with the perspective. You can see the different layers of mountains with trees, and further up, further down, further up there you have some birds in the far. So this is basically a painting that could be seen and redone in this way. The poem on top, right? And the chops, good, and this is a painting that was recreated. Okay, so this is another thing about Chinese painting is that the people are inside the paintings, but they're usually small. Okay, so it's basically a Chinese concept of nature, that people are part of nature. When you see people inside a lot of Western paintings, they're usually the main protagonists, or they're usually big, right? Chinese paintings, people are part of nature. The other thing about Chinese painting is that usually there's a lot of life in it, in the sense that you don't usually just put that still life. That you can do still life in Chinese painting, but still it's kind of like a momentary that you're trying to capture, a moment you're trying to capture. So what you see in impressionist art, in the French tradition, is actually a lot of that is Oriental. You know that Monet and all that took their inspiration from Japanese prints which also Chinese painting, a lot of that is also coming from China. So here, this is question of inspiration. Obviously, nature is the main source of inspiration for most artists, right? So you see, you go to a beautiful place, observe nature, and then basically you start to do painting because you were inspired by it or impacted by it. Okay, so this is a painting of China, of Zheng Gagai, right? So I went to visit a few years ago. This is like probably, I don't know exactly if this is the right, but it's the right place, right? You see a lot of rocks. Obviously, this you don't see, but you add it on, right? The clouds is imagination, the trees, imagination, but then some of this is composed from that experience. It's the aesthetic experience. So basically, how do you pick your subjects? A lot of time is from nature. You observe nature, and then something that spoke to you, and then you basically feel that you wanted to do it. Another part of Chinese painting that is traditional subject is called the Four Gentlemen. Okay, so bamboo, the orchid, chrysanthemum, and then the plum blossom. Right, these are the traditional subjects. Four Gentlemen. So once again, these are my works. This is another recent work I did for a friend, and here this is more like has a certain religious underpinning. This friend of mine wanted to do something that has to do with the Eucharist and Holy Spirit, so it was kind of like a challenge in Chinese painting. So basically, I put in the grapes to represent the Eucharist, right? And then the birds are drinking or basically eating the grapes, right? So basically here is an idea that they're drunk in the spirit, right? Inebriated in the spirit. So the birds are also white, so it's kind of represent purity. They have a crown. It's kind of like a fiery crown. So basically it's representing the Holy Spirit. I didn't use the dove because the dove is kind of like too mundane. I wanted something more special, right? So this painting I did. Some of the paintings, basically fish, some birds, some gourds. Okay, these are the birds. Subject, basically, I'm telling you the four landscape, the Four Gentlemen, and then these are basically nature, right? A lot of these things are either imagined, or nowadays you can see a lot of things, pictures, or you can take photos, and so on. So there are many sources nowadays. In the old days, I guess you have to consult different books. Nowadays on the internet, you can find other things. So these birds are some birds I saw, I don't know, in a cage, right? And so I just felt like painting them. These plants are some flowers I saw also in real life. So this is a composition. They didn't exist together, but then I combined them, right? Fish, animals, okay. These are different subjects they try to do, but not only the main thing about painting is that it's not just the subject, but you also try to portray a certain mood in the painting, right? It's a tiger I did. So here I was experimenting with more like a modern art with a lot of empty space, more like three different colors: blue, yellow, and white. I got someone else to write this. He's a very good calligrapher. I'm not that good at calligrapher, so there's someone to write for me. So cats. This one is a work that I did with my teacher. My teacher did the rock. So I did the kittens and then the flower in the background, and he wrote this, right? This one I also it's an imitation of teacher's teacher, so grand teacher. So end of the paintings. Now we go to the second part, which is calligraphy and seal carving. So this is some of you saw this. This is something I did just recently in Chinese New Year, and this is basically the title of today's talk: Heaven, Earth, and Man in Harmony, right? 天地人和, right? So here basically the beginning of the year, Chinese New Year, I felt that it was kind of like an inspiration, because I felt that we need to have harmony between heaven, the earth, and humanity and us, right? So here, on the one hand, we're facing the epidemic, right? So us and nature, we need some kind of harmony, and also among people, there's all these problems with the political situation in Hong Kong. So I wanted also to at least pray for or wish for greater harmony. And once again, this is another piece of art, in type of art, which is a seal carving. So basically, you have a stone. Usually nowadays, there are different material you can use to do carving. Usually stone nowadays, and then you use a knife, right, to do the carving, right? And how do you design the woods? There's also a lot of art. Usually it comes from a type of calligraphy called Sun Su, meaning the old script, right, of about more or less 2,000 years ago. So you cannot tell very well what these words mean. Okay, this is the word for heavens. Actually looks like a person, right? Stick figure, right? Doesn't look like a person, right? And this is a person, right? It's man, right? It's actually nowadays you can still see a little bit of it. This man is like two strokes, right? And heaven is like that, like it's like that, no? One stroke here, two stroke here, and then like that. So those are very simple words. Okay. So basically, in the old days, what is above the person is heaven, right? So the emphasis on top, right? So this is pointing up top, right? And then man is someone who's kind of bending down. Okay. So in this composition, I used a round shape seal, right? And then also, which is basically the size of a coin, the size actually of a communion, of the Holy Communion, right? So basically talking about harmony, which is also communion. You can see the cross, right? You can see the cross. But this is actually a normal design for something like this. And then I also was playing with the 3 dots, right? You can see one dot here. You can see one dot here, and you see one dot here. That represent the Trinity, Holy Trinity. And basically, you have this man, okay, bending down, right? So here is also an allusion to the incarnation. No, God, the heaven, God of heavens, becoming a person, right? Kneeling down, humility. We talk about his kenosis, or what we call his abasement, or his emptying of himself, becoming one of us. So here, okay, in this composition, we obviously talk about communion or harmony, but then also from the Christian perspective, there are also all these symbols inside, right? There's Trinity, there's a cross, there's incarnation, and there's the cross, and there's the Eucharist. So I mean, can play a lot with this in this kind of design, but here, if you are not religious, you won't see it, right? You can also see this is a very traditional design. Okay. So here, this is another type of composition I've done recently. This is Thy Kingdom Come in Chinese, right? And the fan shape, and there's a seal, basically also as well with the same words, right? Your kingdom come. This is another painting I did of the bitter melon or bitter gourd. And the reason I did this is also because of a spiritual meaning behind, right? So how do I get inspired? I guess in my painting, I would say that sometimes, I guess it's a way of praying for me, right? So when I do art, I think art is very similar to what we call the aesthetic experience. It's very similar to the spiritual experience, because you are in the spiritual experience. You're trying to touch something invisible through some kind of physical means, through prayer, through the sacraments, through gestures, through the word. So there's a part which is invisible, and there's a part that is physical. And painting, you're also trying to do the same thing. Painting is a lot more physical, right? You can see an image, an idea, but then you also try to give rise to something that is invisible. So in some way, the two experiences are very similar, because the aesthetic experience is trying to move the viewer from the visible to something that is beyond, that's invisible. And that's basically very similar to the prayer experience, the spiritual experience, transcending yourself from this world to something beyond. And I think that's one thing that for me has been, that I've been exploring, right? I guess it's natural, because being a priest, being a Christian, so my interior life, inner life, is more or less focused on God and salvation and God's will and beauty of God and the truth of God. So when I do painting, naturally, the thing that comes out from my inside would be something related to that spiritual experience I have, and I try to express that in art form. So here, this is a bit of gourd, and the idea is basically, you can find sweetness in bitterness. So this is the title of my painting. So here I'm trying to talk about the fact that, when I was young, I didn't like this melon. It's too bitter. But then when I grow older, I realized that actually it's not too bad. I enjoy eating it because there's a little bit of minty flavor, sweetness in this melon. So life is like that too, right? So in the old days, when you're young, you probably will try to avoid suffering, bitterness in your life. But then you realize that actually those are good times too, because they can help you grow as a person. So bitterness in Chinese is the word bitterness. It's a special meaning, very Buddhist meaning. Bitter means also suffering, right? So if we could see the positive value of suffering, of bitterness, it can actually help us grow as a person. And so this is also another seal. It's the same idea. Those who could understand, overcome suffering, can become exalted in the end. So here we talked about, on the one hand, Jesus Christ, who basically had this experience of the most bitter of bitterness. Here it's talking about Fu Zhong Fu. And then he's actually become exalted as the man above all men. So in the same way, we could also share in that experience. By uniting our suffering with him, we could also rise and overcome our suffering to a higher level to become exalted, just like Jesus. Obviously not like God, because he's God, but we could imitate it. Here, the two subjects the subject I like, which is the ego. Here, in terms of composition, also try to change the perspective here. This is kind of like a composition where the main subject is up high, and then you have the ocean involved, right? So here is a black and white composition of an ego and no ego. And here I basically use the same poem from a famous poet, Ming Dynasty, and he's talking about leaving the heart for the future generations. Here, once again, the heart has a very special meaning for us, Christian. I'm thinking about Sacred Heart of Jesus. You see, the heart in the old days is actually very similar to an anatomical heart. You have the four chambers and the septum. This is the heart. This is another way of writing the heart. So here is you can probably see this Hoi Sam Kai Sin, meaning happiness. So in Chinese, the word happiness means that your heart is open, right? So once again, I'm thinking about that Jesus opened his heart for us on the cross. He was pierced on the cross. So that's why you have these two things, piercing the heart, right? Like the thing, and it's open for us. So his love opened for us on the cross, and that is the source of our happiness. Here, this is another composition. This is recent. I just did it a few weeks ago. Here in lockdown, I had nothing else to do. So I want to do this because here is basically, you can see these words are white, right, on a red background. These words are red on a white background. Here you have basically a play. When you look at it, you don't know which is white and which is red, right? Some words are actually in red and some words are actually in white, right? This word is in white, this word is in red, this word is in white, this word is in red. So it causes a little bit of optical illusion, right? And actually this word and this word are the same. It's the word sin or some, right? A heart. And it's a mirror image of the other one, right? The heart to heart, which imprints on each other, right? The heart imprinting on each other. So here, once again, it's a famous Chinese saying talking about human love. But here I'm also thinking about the Sacred Heart and the heart of Jesus imprinting on mine so that I could love like him, right? Some yeah. Some of the paintings, this is more like a subject, not the normal subject. These are ducks in Canada called the loons, right? Once again, I'm according to my tradition, there's a little bit of realism here. You can see the bird, very beautiful, very colorful. You can also see the strokes, right? Importance of the strokes. You don't want to miss that. Okay, you see the strokes in the wing thing, and also in the background. The strokes are very strong and fluid. But here I'm also using the what we call the three-dimensional characteristics of our tradition, Ling Nan School. So you can see the water being moved. Okay, you can see that. Right. So here you have two loons doing this. Okay. Some of the compositions, but this have certain religious connotation here. I'm talking about the fact that the birds going around collecting honey from the flowers. And when I write this, basically I'm saying that evangelization is that, spreading good news is like that. You take something that is sweet and tasty, and then once you've tasted it, you want to share that. You want to spread that around, spreading the sweetness around. Here's in the painting that I was thinking about. The moon represents the Holy Eucharist, and the monstrance blessing the world and purifying the world. So here you have the snow scene, okay, and then the moon is basically trying to bless the world, okay, blessing us and purifying us at the same time. Mystical rose, basically here. I did that a few years ago in Chile when I was on retreat, or 2-month retreat, and then they have some very beautiful roses, and so on. Basically, talking about the same thing, how to spread this prayer life, which is a fragrance that you want to share with others, like bees. This is a painting, once again, of a place in Italy, the Capri Islands. In summer, usually you go south to this place where you can see the island from the Sorrento Peninsula. And here is a painting of one of the scenes that I enjoy contemplating. So here I also made a poem. Actually, someone helped me with the poem. My Chinese is not that good. So this is a translation of the poem. Basically talking about, you hear once again the sway of the wind blowing through the olives, and you see the birds coming home, right? And then you can see, okay, in distance, a very beautiful island, okay? And then because of this, it reminds you of your heavenly abode. So basically the birds coming home, going home, and then I'm thinking about my homeland, which is kind of like a beautiful place, so that I don't have to worry about the noises and the dust and the worries of this life. So on the one hand, you can see the scenery is part of the something that I saw there. Once again, the three trees are also representing the Trinity, and then this represents in some way the heavenly abode. Some of the landscape here. This is actually the same title here. This is about the water source. So when you drink water, you think about where the water comes from. So you think about, on the one hand, before about where you're going, your heavenly abode, and where you come from. Also, you can think about God that way. Now, calligraphy. This is a calligraphy I did just recently. First of all, from scripture. And this one is basically about the current pandemic, right? So this is I find this psalm very soothing for me, because it's talking about God's protection, that we don't have to worry because He's protecting us. Okay, and in this moment of pandemic, we could also rely on the Word of God and His promise, His protection. Some of the Psalms. This is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. This is the thing I shall want. So this is different scripts, right? This is the Daisy, and this is Policy. And this is another Psalm. Okay, one thing I ask of the Lord, that's what I shall seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord all days of my life. So something that I guess these are my favorite Psalms, right? This is the Magnificat, also in Old Chinese. So all these translations come from a very famous scholar. I think he passed away. I think he wrote in the 40s, and he actually translated 150 Psalms and a lot of these Christian Catholic prayers into Old Chinese. So here, something about another art form, which is carving. So here, this is looks like a cross, right? That's look like a crucifix, and this is also a crucifix. So the words actually are actually not are actually Old Chinese, right? The Old Chinese, when you discover the meaning of this word, okay, it's not pan, it's not the cross, right? It's a word with or present, right? So you see the old way, this is the word joy, okay, zai. So it means that here, this is actually the word of the angel, okay? Glory to God in highest and peace on earth to those who love God, right? So the word zai, I put it in the middle, okay? To emphasize the cross, you know, that God is with us at his birth, but it's also a shape of cross. He's also with us on the cross. So in our suffering, he's with us. It's like he was there as Emmanuel. Here, this is another composition. You can see one die, which is basically the same word as this, with. And then here is basically 3 crosses. So what word is that? It's the word world, Joy Sai Ying Hong. So he is, you know, the hero of this earth, right? So he's hero, and then the 3 cross obviously refers to Calvary. Okay, and interestingly, this is the word for the word world. World. The world is made up of 3 crosses, right? And so it's also significant for me. I mean, I would say I'm playing with these symbols to give them a more Christian meaning, right? This word, what word is that? Probably you will know, right? This is also looks like a cross, right? This looks like what? A drop of blood, right? And actually, this one I just did 2 weeks ago. Some friend asked me to do this for him. It's the word Ju Qi Ping Kwong. Okay, Ju is actually the word the Lord, right? It's the same as this word, right? The old word Ju is basically a flame, fire, right? But here I'm using it as a drop of blood, right? So this blood, okay, is the word Lord, okay, has origin, right? It looks like the word blood, and then the Lord gives us peace. Okay, this is Ping on. The word, I mean, the blood of the Lord gives us peace, right? Some of the calligraphy sayings from Confucius, saying from Buddhist sources. I think I'm running out of time. This one I also did recently. Right? So it's about, this is actually a Taoist concept, right? Infinity, well, without end. obviously the Buddhist or the Taoist concept of gig is very, very interesting, about working to find eternal happiness. And so here, basically, how do you, what does this mean, right? It means that this is also more gig. And this one is 復歸於無極, how do I return to the everlasting infinity, right? So無極 for me is another way to talk about heaven, right, from the Christian interpretation, right? So I use these things because it's kind of like a way to understand or combine the Chinese with the Christian spirituality, right? So here, these are poems from the Hong He Wang, the Kanzi, and then basically some of these poems he write about Christianity or Catholicism. And then other inspirations. This one is a very famous poem, and I just wrote these two phrases, right, about the silkworm that dies, okay, and the flame, okay, that also dies, and then the wax that dries up, right? So it's a little bit sad, but it's actually about human love, right? The poet is talking about how he misses being with his lover. He was not able to be with her for some reason. But here it's talking about human love. But actually, it's very interesting because these two images are used by Saint Teresa of Avila, right? He talks about the 7 mansions, 7 morada, where in our union with God, okay, we have to experience a certain type of death, like the butterfly, like the silkworm, that has to die in order to rise to a new life as a moth, right, or a butterfly. And also she compares it also to the flame, right, flame of love. So these are different examples here. This is another thing that I carved recently, I think in the summer. And this is a very famous poem from Li Bai. Here is, this poem is actually very, very funny poem. I enjoy this poem a lot. This poem is in praise of getting drunk, right? He's a really, how should I say, famous poet, one of the most famous poets in Chinese history. And then basically, he's talking about his interior life, right? And he's talking about drinking, but actually he's talking about why he wants to get drunk. He's saying that I want to get drunk because life seems to be too painful. He's talking about the existential pain that he could not find meaning in his life, right? So basically he's saying that at one point he said, no, throughout time, sages and men of virtue have only a company of solitude, okay? 古來聖賢皆寂寞, right? 古來聖賢皆寂寞, right? So he's saying that life is not worth not living, but in the sense that when he think about the meaning of life, he came to a point where he felt that it doesn't seem to make sense. Why am I here? And so he said that in order to forget about this painful question, to ignore it, he has to get drunk. So when I carved this, 聖言不寂寞, right? So I'm just, it's kind of like a response to him, basically saying that the men of virtues and sages are lonely, right? I'm saying that no, you're not lonely, because here he's expressing this anguish of the meaning of life. And I'm saying that we are not lonely because the meaning of life is basically God. So I think the Chinese soul in the deepest level is lonely because it's looking for something and it cannot identify it. What's the meaning, right? So and that's why, I mean, he said that let's get drunk. And I'm responding to him, no, there is a meaning. You're not alone. Okay, you're not alone. So there are some of the calligraphy and also meaning. So here, this is about the Lamb of God. So you can also do in seal carving. You can also do the 12 zodiac signs, the 12 animals. So the year of the ram. This is a ram, but then the ram is caught in the brambles. It reminds us of Abraham. Okay. And then this is another seal, basically of the word. In Chinese, I'm also playing with the word because there are two words here, or one word. The word lamb or ram, and the word me, right? And which means the word righteousness together. Yi is that might say. So basically, I'm talking about the Lamb of God who takes the sins of the world away, who is the Lamb of God, Jesus, who takes my place to be, the Lamb, and that is my righteousness. So I'm playing with different concepts or different words that could be understood one way or the other and have a new meaning. I think that's a part of the creativity of Chinese art. So I think I've talked a lot. I still have a couple more to show, but I think for now, if you have any questions, maybe you could ask those questions about Chinese painting or about Chinese art, about inspiration, about this is more like a sharing with you about how I interact with my art and how I use it in a form of prayer. Right,
Yeah.
so.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Is not quite a question, but when I look at the tiger that you painted and there's one more, there's a sense of movement. I mean, is it deliberate? Is like, is very much unlike other Chinese painting that tend to be more static.
Yeah, that's more. Yeah, actually, that's more in our style. We want to put life inside the paintings. So usually, when you do a flower, I always put a bug. I don't know. This is a part of our tradition. That we don't want to have still life. We want to put in life. That movement in there is very important.
Yeah. And just one more question. I don't know if it seems that in Chinese painting, the black and white paint seems to enjoy a higher kind of revelation than colorful paint. Is that true? It is.
It's true because it's harder.
All right.
So basically, it has to do with the fact, why is calligraphy so highly valued? Because calligraphy is more simplistic. The more simple it is, the more difficult for you to hide the defects, right? So the most simple things are the hardest, right? Let's say, I'm not sure you know how to write Chinese, but one of the most difficult words to write, the word yan, right? 2 strokes, no? How do you write it nice? it's the hardest thing to write because it's so simple that if you don't do it right, it looks ugly, right? Right. And so the most simple it is, the harder it is, right? So even in carving, okay, you see, okay, this is red, okay, and this is white. Which is harder?
I think the white is harder, right?
Yes, the white is harder because basically it's more calligraphic. I mean, technically, the white is easier, right?
Oh, okay.
But when you get good at it, okay, it's harder. So sometimes when you start with something, it looks like it's easier, but in the end, it becomes harder, right? So that's kind of like the nature of art, right? Once you get good at it, then you realize that it's really hard. This actually is easier because, for example, when you do one stroke, you have to carve all around it, right? You carve around it, you get the one, right? And to get the same effect in white, you just have to go once, right?
Yeah.
And you can get this effect. So in some way, like this is a one stroke, but in some way, this stroke, okay, is harder to do because you cannot go through it many times. You only have one chance, right?
Right. Yeah.
So.
It's true. Yeah.
So that's why black and white paintings are harder because you have to represent the depth and the strokes and the shades all in one few strokes, right? So it's hard in that way. Yes.
Yeah. Then you have one more tiger painting, a tiger which is like standing next to a river. I don't know, trying to jump or drink some water. That painting is it reminds me a little bit of the woodcuts in the Japanese woodcut. Because the tiger, the figure is like so bulky, but it's not. Maybe it's deliberate, not. It's not an atomic. It's not like you don't see. Yeah. You don't see the actual muscles and all that, but it's like very bulky kind of. Thing, crouching over, right? The river.
It's a crouching tiger, yeah.
Crouching
it's looking
tiger.
at you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's looking at you. It's looking at you too. Yes.
So then it's like really stout. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have that kind of. It doesn't. It's different from a tiger that the one standing on the perching on the rock. Yeah. That one that is about to leap. Yeah.
Yes.
But this one is like almost like a Japanese woodcut. The big lump there, right? Very heavy and heavy set. Yeah.
Right.
But thank you very much. It's very interesting. The different kinds of styles that have influenced your painting. Yeah. Zhang Daiqin is actually, wow, it's something. I've seen one of his painting, I think in Singapore, right? Yeah, but I haven't seen one.
No, he basically, to understand Zhang Daiqin, you have to understand his background. Actually, he started with very, very detailed fine painting, and so it's very deceiving. It looks like he's just blotching and things like that, but I mean, there's a lot of substance or background and tradition in his painting. Unlike a lot of modern Chinese paintings, which don't have painting, right? So I mean, it's very similar to the music industry, right? In the music industry, there are people who basically couldn't sing, and they are rock stars, right? And then there are other people who really had a strong musical training, and then you can tell the difference. Those who know music knows the difference between someone who could sing and someone who just kind of could rap or just kind of have no musical training. So Chinese painting in some way is, I usually compare it a lot to the orchestra in the sense that there is a set of rules that you don't break. Right? There's a certain kind of rules, very traditional rules, and you have to be creative within those sets of rules, right? So just like a symphony or musical instruments,
Right.
You have to be good in what you're doing, and then you can be creative. But then there's always a boundary. Whereas in modern art, Western art, there's no longer any boundary. Anything goes, right? The thing is you tape a banana onto the wall, and it costs like $120,000, right? You can sell that, right? So I mean, that's the thing, right? There's no boundary, right? You can, if you call it art, then it's art, right? So
I do hope to one day see some. So you mentioned 3 groups: landscape, the 4 gentlemen, and portraits. So
yes, I didn't do portraits. I don't do portraits. It's just that I never had chance to take lessons in portraits. So that's I don't know. Actually, I had a temptation during this lockdown to start doing portrait painting, and then I had to pick between that and to do calligraphy, which is the ancient way of writing. And decided, oh, that's probably easier. I have more time to do that rather than portrait painting, because I mean, I never took lessons. I never had a teacher, so probably I can learn it on my own by going through books. But I thought, no, I'd probably do calligraphy.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else want to ask any questions? You can unmute yourself. Anybody else? Just to say that Father will be giving the same talk in Cantonese next Friday at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's nothing. Yeah, thanks, Father, for the very interesting talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father. Greetings from Amsterdam.
So next Friday in our language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father.